free ride mountain biking is a huge part of our sport and always will be, and pushing these boundaries.
Yeah,
But to be part of like the first official team's like pretty damn cool.
it was all happening way before then. But like I say, we didn't get anything on camera for a long time. Like we were literally riding steep lines in '81, dropping cliffs in '84. I have footage that's coming out in the new Free Ride Entertainment movie. The guy Derek Western, who made all the new World Disorder movies, and I gave him some footage I have of a bunch of my buddies riding these steep couloirs in like '87, maybe '80, probably 1987, and they are like crashing hard. And it's like a 50-degree shoot with corners, and they're going end over end, no helmets, no suspension. It's nuts. And like, and through the '90s, we're doing stuff. I actually just here, I'll show you. I just found a T-shirt that I painted in 1993. I'll show you. I just put it on my Instagram of me picturing dropping cliffs
Oh, we got to use that
in
pic.
1993.
You sent me that pic. We'll
So
use
that
it.
oh, will do. That's that T-shirt that I hand painted,
Sick.
and it was just me imagining dropping cliffs, and so that was in '93, and then in 1995, I was actually in Whistler, and I ran into a guy named Greg Stump who made the best ski movies of the time. He made the super rowdy extreme movies, and a lot of sports were transitioning from competition to free riding. Skiing had done it with a movie called The Good, the Rad, and the Gnarly, and then the Blizzard of Oz was the one that really broke open the mold. Snowboarding, they had like the Totally Board series, Totally Board 1, Totally Board 2, and they just called them TB3, TB4, all the way through. Dirt biking had Crusty Demons of
Yeah,
Dirt.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So all these sports were transitioning from racing on the clock to free riding, which hadn't really been done in action sports yet. And things go through different waves, but so that was happening then, and it hadn't happened to mountain biking. Everyone was focusing on, people on the clock, and John Tomac and Tinker Juarez, racing cross country, and Greg Herbold, and all these old legends were racing their hearts out, but there was nothing about free riding in any of the media. There was magazines by then. There's a few movies out, like there was a movie called Tread that came out. It had Hans Ray doing a little bit of trials in it, which was kind of like an early free riding, but it was more
And
trials.
and Chain Smoke.
And
You remember
then
that movie Chain Smoke? Is that after this as well?
Chain Smoke, yeah, that
Afterwards?
came out. That came out in '96, I
Okay.
believe, um, with Palmer
Yeah, and like Fuzzy
doing
Hall on
the.
a mountain bike and stuff.
That's
Right?
right.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, yeah.
right. I think,
That's my
yeah.
hit. That's like, yeah, I guess it's probably the first movie my generation got to see. Okay.
Right, right. And Palmer actually just got inducted into the Hall of Fame. Him and Rob Warner.
Oh, what?
Um,
When did
and
that
just
happen?
Yeah, it just happened. And like they're not inducted, but
It's like
in writing they're in, but
okay,
the
the full
official event
ceremony
hasn't
hasn't
happened yet.
happened or whatever.
The
Because I
ceremony
spoke
hasn't
to
happened
Bear
yet.
Claw a little while ago, and he was in the part like the wave that went before. So this must be the
Right.
new wave. That's
This is
epic,
like it hasn't
dude.
happened yet,
Warner
but
and
it's
Palmer
happening. Yeah.
at the same one.
Yeah. Yeah,
Oh,
totally.
sweet.
So
Okay.
that'll be awesome. We'll come back to that. So '95, I met Greg Stump, who made these wicked ski movies, and he goes, "Hey, I'm making a mountain bike movie. Do you know any mountain bikers who can do a 360?" And I'm like, "No, I don't, but I know Richie Slay can do a 360 on a BMX. I just saw him do one yesterday. I'm sure he could do one on a mountain bike." And so it was like a couple months later, and I was working in the woods, and I heard a rumor that Christian Beijing, who eventually made the Crank movies, was coming to town to film Richie Slade do a 360 for this Greg Stump mountain bike movie. And I'm like, he's a BMXer. I gotta poach this shoot. And I was in the woods, actually on mushrooms with these two girls, and we're all taking turns kissing each other. I was kissing these two girls, and my ride was leaving, and they're like, "Tippie, we're leaving in 5 minutes. If you want to ride to town, let's go." And the movie was being filmed the next day, and I'm like, and I'm kissing these two girls, and I'm like, "Girls, I gotta go." And they're like, "What? No, you can't go. We're gonna go back to the no, no." And I'm like, "Oh no, I have to go." And they're like, "Why would you go anywhere? Like, we're gonna what? Where do you have to go?" And I'm like, "I'm gonna be in a mountain bike
No
movie."
way. This is a
Bye,
true
girls.
story.
This is a true
Stop
story. So
it.
I kissed them both goodbye, And then I ran to the vehicle and I got in the vehicle and I drove to town because we're like, 30, 40 kilometers into the bush.
On
And
shrooms,
I got
kissing
on
two
mushrooms.
girls.
And so I get to town, and then the next day we go out and we film Richie do the 360, and he stomps it. And then I smoke a joint with him, and then he went to do it again, but he got off axis, and he ended up face planting face first into the ground. He didn't even let go of the handlebars. And as it turns out, the 360 that he stomped was out of focus, and the crash was in focus. So that's all they used for the movie. He's hated me ever since.
Well, it wasn't your
Anyway, so
fault. You didn't
I
crash.
know. Well, I got him stoned, and he actually threw him off his game for the second 360.
Again,
Anyway, so
again,
then
you didn't. Did
right,
you have a gun there to his head? I don't think so.
no, that's true. That's true. And so after he did the 360, they're like, okay, well, they wrote a bit of single track, and then they're like, okay, well, we need to film something else. And I'm like, well, let's go ride some steeps. And they're like, what do you mean steeps? And I'm like, some steep lines. And we didn't call free riding back then. We just called it riding steeps. And so I took them to where the Counts Bike Ranch is now. It's by the Valley View Skating Arena. And up from the parking lot are all these steep slopes that go quite aggressive. And myself and Craig Olson, who were into doing that stuff since the 80s, dropped some lines, and they were like blown away. Like they'd never seen anything like it. And we were like bucking and broncoing down these lines, and we had to use Specialized bikes because it was sponsored by Specialized, this movie. And so I was on a size small Specialized. I'm like 6 feet, 220 pounds, on this size small bike with like super narrow bars, a big long stem, and like like 2 inches of travel in the rock shock forks, and I'm bouncing down the slope, and like I'm like swapping sideways, I'm bouncing this way, and I rode it out, and I rode the bike right down to the road, and I hit the ditch, and I bent the forks and bent the wheel right back into the frame, and handed and stepped off the bike and handed it to them, and then they're like filming with a Bolex film camera. Oh my God, Christian says, little French Canadian, and he goes, okay, you're in the movie. So then we took turns on the other. There was two bikes, a red one and a black one. So we took turns filming on the one bike, dropping steep lines, and that was the first free riding, traditional free riding that got into a mountain bike movie in 1995 in a movie called Pulp Traction. Um, and then eventually, the next year we did a movie called Tao of Riding, which had some cliff drops that were like, 7, 8 feet. And then we did Cranked the year after, and that's the movie that really
Yeah.
broke open free riding to the world when we filmed Cranked.